Welcome to Decentralized Dawn, where lifelong friends Chicago and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Last show of the year. It is the end of 2023. What a wild and crazy year it has been. I am Chicago, and on my right is Disco. How you doing, Disco?
I'm doing great, everybody. I couldn't be more excited to, turn the page, to jump into 24 and see what happens, And the one thing I've learned over the last handful of years is I really don't know what's going to happen. So I know it'll be interesting. That's all I got.
Yeah, and this is the only industry where the more you dig, the less you know. You keep going to different tiers of underground rabbit holes. I'm thinking of like The Matrix, not the first movie, but those second and third, where they had all those tunnels and all the weird electronic Firefly cars, the Nebuchadnezzar, and you just keep going in these different levels, up, down, and all around. And the smarter I think I get in this space, the less I know, which is beautiful and it's insane.
Yeah, it's not boring, and that's one way to say it. And kind of a similar thought, like the first time I went to Seoul, South Korea, it was like I had no idea that there was like 8 levels underneath the surface of the roads that are going on. It was just like once you get to those places and there's like, whoa, you're at the lobby of the hotel, but underneath it's a shopping mall and underneath it's this, and you're like, it just is so incredible. So
does it really go down? Like, I doubt 8, but does it really go down a bunch?
Yeah. And they were so, like, at least when I went there, they were so kind of, always on the forefront or, adopted of technology. Like one of the bigger demands for the leadership of the city was to really have astute Wi-Fi that could handle underneath, subterranean stuff. So it was incredible. But yeah, I completely agree with the complexity and the layers, and anyone I know that thinks that they're smart, I don't necessarily put them in that category, because the smarter people are, the more they admit that they really don't know that much, because it's just, there's so many levels to everything, and surface level stuff is certainly not the jam anymore.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's basically, I think the people you want to follow are the people who are like, look, everything's changing. It's a changing landscape all the time. This is my opinion. Here's the data behind it. And, I think we can both agree with X, Twitter, what have you, where most of the conversation for crypto happens. Obviously Instagram's getting bigger, but that's just even a bigger, hotter mess. But yeah, it's just gotten, it's become spam central, and the loudest voices have resulted, in my opinion, the best returns on coins, almost one-to-one directly.
Yeah. And so it's like a marketplace for shilling, and then you go and you wonder, like, okay, but who's encouraging or funding the messaging that's getting it? And then you're like, well, there has to be an ROI on this programming, because you do see the corresponding or correlated rise in price. So,
right.
We talked about it in another show, and it's like, I just don't really know who's, in these inner circle realms that are kind of, have a heck of a lot more of at least of a strategy, than retail folks. There's more to it. And I think that with a lot of the things that once you get kind of that, you get the crypto bug and you get the bug on this or that, but once you get the bug on digging a little bit, it's almost infinite how many levels and places you can go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I think it's worth pointing out too that a lot of people are fed up with crypto Twitter. I know I just saw a DC investor. He's like, forget it. Like, I'm going over to Farcaster. And, I think the more this happens, the more people are like, you can't have I think everyone wants a nuanced conversations. And I think a lot of these influential people who I like and follow are willing to have interesting conversation and nuanced conversations, and maybe even some of them are confident enough in themselves to know that they may be wrong. I know that's kind of how we approach it. Like, hey, I'm open to a different take, but you know, I know he's going, you know, and people talk like, but and then they always come back to crypto Twitter. But a big one was Zach ZBT. You know, he has been probably the number one voice in our space to point out grift. And I think, I can't speak for him, but he just deactivated his account entirely. And I think he or she basically, the more they dug, the more at its core, and even the distribution of something seemingly very decentralized like ETH was just rife with alleged, you know, ties to like the Chinese government and all these different entities all over the world that are certainly less than savory. So he deactivated, and who knows, maybe he got threatened, or maybe he got too close to someone. It scares you, because those voices of reason, like I said, I just keep, every day I get on crypto Twitter, I prune at least 5 or 6 folks, or at least unfollow their reposts. I turn off the reposts just so I can have a cleaner timeline, and it's getting way less Suzuki, as you can imagine, and more big macro trends, which is the stuff I'm interested in anyway. But seeing him go, you know, DC investor, obviously Polyanya, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I think
I don't either. Like, that's a tough one for me to, like, how it's written textually doesn't give me a straight idea of how to translate it.
Yeah, and a lot of these folks left, and you know, if you go on Farcast, or even the Bankless guys were like, hey, we're planting our flag over there. That one feels a little less authentic to me, because they're still, you know, honestly, I feel like they're getting more and more hype train. And I actually
Farcaster or Bankless?
I think Bankless. I actually did something. My main source of podcasts is, I do a lot of YouTube, but my main ones that I follow are on just the cruddy Apple podcast app. And I think it was Friday or Saturday, I was looking at something to watch. I was going on a bunch of errands and I was all excited. And I unfollowed Bankless. I was like, you know, I'm done. I like, now that they just had the Solana guy on again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't, something feels off, and I feel like they're pivoting to more just cash cow now. And you know what? I can get my news from plenty of places now that you and I are giving our honest, fair takes. I don't need them anymore.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, you know, oh, you know, we're coming for them or what's happening or anything. But the bottom line is, like, you look at careers and you look at, you know, things, and God bless, you know, things for having their really great moment in time. And, you know, when I got turned onto it, it was a really, you know, kind of a special onboarding, you know, feeling like I'm part of something and kind of a resource and everything like that. But it's tough, especially when, you know, there isn't a roadmap, you know, for the industry, let alone, you know, anything else. So you kind of wonder if some people reach a level of success or, you know, audience or whatever it may be. You know, it's kind of some of the things that are kind of just in our heads for themes this week. You know, do they hit a certain level of exposure where then people get in their heads on, hey, this is what you should be doing now, or hey, look, let's get you doing this, you know, and this or that. So I know we even talked about it a little with the Real Vision side of things too. And it's like, you kind of feel almost like, you know, are there people behind it now who are really trying to go growth and, you know, take these things to different levels? And, you know, I think that one thing that's great about what we're trying to do here is we don't have aspirations of, you know, world of, you know, anything really. Like, we're not looking for any exposure. We're not looking for anything. We're just trying to have conversations and kind of looking for some knowledge and some interesting things to kind of talk about. And frankly, we're looking for an outlet to talk about things that not many people in our day-to-day really want to go down with. You know, I was dying to talk to folks about some of this stuff over the holidays. And I realized, I'm like, yeah, we should do a show just so we can touch base on what happened. So
yeah, no one out there cares. And if we get excited to talk to normies about it, you're going to have to explain to them very slowly anyway. But yeah, their last couple of shows have been like all this eigenlayer. Their last show was about like the risks of it now, because people probably called them out. They're like, dude, double staking something. Yeah.
They really? Oh,
and then and then the show, actually the last one I think was Solana, and then Eigen was before it. So it's like they are pumping these things hard, and it just doesn't feel. I'm sure in this bull market they will be among the biggest, or they still may remain the biggest, but I think a lot of the OGs are or already have moved on from them. And, it may take time, but I think other ones, we'd certainly love it to be us. And, if you're out there and you've got a take different than ours, or you just want to talk about stuff, or you have a good idea for the show or a segment to talk about in decentralization, AI, or crypto, hit us up, because, it's, I think, with all the crypto Twitter hype getting worse and worse and worse with the algorithms, I think a group of us needs to stick together and be like, all right, at least I can trust these folks. For us, we want it to be decentralized on, but we want it to be with our audience too, because this space is hard enough as it is. As Disco said many times, like the FOMO filter, like it's so easy to have your brain hijacked. So if we're in it together, we kind of follow the signaling from other people who have a more metered approach like us. We're only all going to benefit. And I'm guessing we'll see good gains, probably mitigating some of the risk, and also the risk of just like, how many NFTs did I buy last month? Last month, as you balance your books, you're like, my God, like, did I need all these things? Like,
allow us to be part of your accountability partnerships.
Well said. Like, it's like decentralized on accounting firm.
Yeah, we will help you. Anyhow, there were it's such an interesting end of year time. There's different ways to do it. We always usually like to talk through some of the kind of happenings over the week. And that being said, like crypto Twitter was a little slower, and people are
Right.
Bigger folks are taking bigger breaks and stuff like that right now, but there still was quite a bit of year-end stuff that was relatively interesting to kind of check in on, and then just to kind of think of some of the things that are coming down the pipe as we turn the page to another year. So I don't know where we want to start today. Do we want to get into some of the stuff that some of the stories from last year?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about 23 and let's just look at the big picture. So, obviously a lot of the big runs happen at the end of the year, right? I mean, namely, what was it? I think it was late September. It might have even started in early October, but the big ones are obviously injective coin. I know injective went up thousands of %, and obviously the big main chain one was in the top 10 was Solana, which has just gone meteoric since October. It was 20, maybe even 19, and now I know we peaked. What do you think we peaked at? 120, 130. So
I saw 123 at least, at some point over the week, past week.
So a 6x in 2 or 3 months. I mean, just insane. And again, I think a lot of that was commensurate with the hype of crypto Twitter, but also all the experimentation and degenery that Ethereum's had in the last couple of years with NFTs and specifically DeFi and airdrop tokens. Remember, Solana hasn't, they certainly obviously already had NFTs that was in full steam ahead mode in the past year or two, but DeFi was not. And now with all the airdrops like this Bonk token, which has come down to earth again, but I mean, Solana is just going nuts. And I think that with the narrative really, in both timelines and people's comments, like you couldn't escape it. And, it's thawed quite a bit. I think it's back down in the 108s, 109s or something, but it just went on a tear. It's still a 5+X.
It was almost impossible to not have FOMO on that, especially if you've been in the space for a little bit, like you've been aware of it forever, and then seeing it go, it was like, okay, wow, I don't want to be the one that sleeps on something that I've been aware of for a long time. And I think a lot of people kind of, who are at least waiting in the space for kind of this next bull run to really kick in, probably picked up a little bit just to kind of hedge their bet and not be the one that picked the wrong horse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I FOMO'd into Solana 2 weeks ago at 70, and I'm happy with the run. I want to set up another ETH validator, and if I bail now, this gets me closer, but I suspect it's got a little more run in it, but who knows? I could be wrong and it could go the opposite way, but I hedged a little and spread it out from mostly Bitcoin in Ethereum to just hit Solana purely for the fact that I saw the 3x on the Google search queries for like October through. Yeah, so I was like, you know what? It's the new people are coming in, the fees are low, but in no way or shape or form would I buy at this point a Solana NFT. But I just, that network, I don't know if it's here for the long term, but there's room for a lot of networks. The big ordinals for me and on-chain NFTs are the way I'm going.
So looking for those who are listening, we have just a chart up, and this is from Coindesk, and it's a Coindesk Market Index, which is essentially their version of an S&P 500 for more digital assets and stuff. And you do see that Bitcoin, this was really a big year, in terms of the performance and kind of a resurgence of Bitcoin. So I think that, when you kind of zoom out, like, yeah, Solana got a lot of buzz and, made some huge gains and everything, but Bitcoin really had a strong showing overall. And looking at just, how that overperformed, significantly. And then, Ethereum, again, it's not tanking, it's not underperforming massively, but it's not keeping up. Yeah, but it's not keeping up with what's going on. And, I don't know, and we're not making predictions or anything from that perspective, but, I remain bullish on seeing Ethereum have a big time in the spotlight in the coming days. So we'll see we'll see if that's right or not.
Yeah. So basically, and one thing people have to think about too is it's at some point when you make a chart, you always have to put a beginning and an end. And obviously the comparisons are always January 1st through December 31st or whatever. It's yearly charts. And, Ethereum was down at the beginning of this year, and because of the Bitcoin ETF, everything is up. So the point here is that obviously, they got Bitcoin up at about 150, 160% on the year, the calendar year. ETH is up probably 60 to 70%, but the CMI, the basket of like all cryptocurrencies, is up like 100, 110%. So the only big point is here that Bitcoin outperformed the full CMI basket market, obviously because of the ETF and because it's the most decentralized and the most hardened at this point. But Ethereum lagged way behind. So I guess that is a good springboard to say, like, do you think in 2024, do you think ETH's fate will change, or do you think there's so many builders there, like, it'll come? It doesn't matter when, it'll come.
I think it's going to come. I couldn't be more happy about the opportunity to continue to be able to acquire at a lower rate. And, I have the FOMO of the ETH train left the gate, and I didn't, get to the points that I wanted to get to be able to execute some of the strategies I want to. So I think that that's there. And we also haven't, I think it probably is very dependent or somewhat dependent on if Bitcoin does get the ETF in January, because they're next in line in May for that run of it. So if we see that it actually happens and it comes through, then what's going to happen? People are going to be like, oh, well, don't forget about Ethereum, and that's coming next. So I think that, I'm happy, and I think people need to be more happy for, any success in the space and any sort of exposure, and look at it as not as much like, oh, this is the team in my division I root for. It's like, guys, right. the whole space, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for all the different chains that are, doing well and built right. And I think that if you really look under the hood, and I'm not a technologist or anything like that, but everything I've understood about it is that, Ethereum's really got some good stuff in the engine and under the hood, and that hasn't stopped. So
yeah, and a lot of people are using it. Like you said, the big date for Ethereum is May. It will be interesting to see. I mean, obviously the SEC has, with Bitcoin, I mean, it's taken 10 years to allegedly hypothetically get this ETF approved by January 10th. Looks like the date we may be getting if this goes through. But, with Ethereum, they have to look at it all over again, whereas Bitcoin was fairly distributed from the beginning. It started out with mining, blocks of coins, and those blocks, at the halvenings, each block, it became smaller and smaller, but it was a fair distribution. Theoretically, anyone who knew about it could have gotten involved. Ethereum, I think, was far better than Solana as far as its distribution, but the foundation and Vitalik and Joe, was it Lubos or whatever his name is, with was it Dapper Labs? Like, those guys are sitting on a lot, but I don't think it is nearly as much and as lopsided as some of these other layer twos and these other tokens where the teams are holding a lot of them with the VCs. And that's another big reason I just don't love Solana. It just feels like the distribution was it would be very easy to have, what is Ethereum? 120 million tokens roughly. I think Solana's in the 500 or 400 or 500 million range. Like, not that the amount of tokens in itself matters, but like, how many are being held back by that? I know staking, I think it's in the 60%, high 60% range of Solana staking, whereas ETH is only, at 23%. So there's a lot of red flags, but I'll jump on the bandwagon short term, but longer term, I'm probably Bitcoin first and ETH second heading into 24.
Well, there's one gentleman who's certainly Bitcoin first, and so much so the firm is called MicroStrategy, meaning there's one strategy involved, and Mr. Saylor scooped up an additional bag of Bitcoin to add to his stash, so they put another 615 million in, so that's making their which is the equivalent to like 14,600 something, coins, and now they're sitting at close to 5.9 billion in US dollar equivalent to what they have. So that is we've done a few something goods, and you've done a few something goods, and you've talked about consistency and showing up and doing it, and there's a guy who's turned off the FOMO and focused, and it leads to the question of like, how much is going to be available and how much does he kind of represent, or the company represent, of the addressable market. And when you have these potential new demand with potential approving of these ETFs, how's that all going to shake out? And do all roads have to go through him? Blah blah blah.
He's got a lot. What does he have? I think he has 189,150 Bitcoin at an average cost. You told me before the show at 31,160 at a coin. So he is in the black. He's in happy land, right? He's up at least 25-30%, up at 43 now. So hats off to him. Like, what a convicted person. You run this company, you're in tech, you have a lot of clients, and he convinced the board. He was a majority shareholder, so he really convinced himself, and COVID went down the rabbit hole, and was like, every time he probably looks at his numbers, every time they have a board meeting, he's probably like, well, guys, we could do some more marketing and really expand our clientele and hire a sales force and really have more account managers all over the world, or we could buy more Bitcoin. I'll say and I think from our standpoint as, insiders, people who've been around it a while, I'm sure people from the outside think it's crazy. To me, it's like, makes sense. Like, how are you going to beat, with actually doing labor, the squeeze that's going to happen on Bitcoin? It might not happen January 11th, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I traveled for the holidays back to my hometown, and there were at least 3 times where someone was like, "Oh, we're saving, a couple $100 by doing it this way." I'm like, "Well, just put it into Bit." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like it was so second nature. I'm like, "Oh, well, if you're saving that, then just go stack more Bit." And it was like, and that's what he did, And I think what's kind of cool about this is that this recent purchase that we're talking about was at 42,000. So it's not like he was waiting for a big dip. It's not like he lacked conviction, after the run up that we saw for 23. At the end, he went back in and bought at pretty much the peak that we've seen, at least since, 2 years. Right. So he's not shy about, buying at this price. And, I don't know, hats off, because, that's conviction personified in my mind.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah. So just to put numbers to that, Disco just mentioned, the more he grabs and the more some of these ETFs must be pre nibbling a little, although I suspect some of them aren't because you would think it would just already be a squeeze. But the amount of Bitcoin that left the exchanges, so your Binance's, obviously, your Coinbases, and all the other little ones that a lot of you haven't heard of, in the last 7 days, 20,147 more Bitcoin left the exchanges. That's 875 million off the exchanges. So the total on the exchanges right now is 9.2%. So every week, right now, at least till the ETF comes, we're looking at that number because we want to see, like, at some point, is there going to be a squeeze? Or when the price goes up, are more people going to be like, let's sell the news. I'm going to put it on the exchange and get that percentage either even at 9.2% or even go up, and I'm going to make my hefty profit. I waited and now I made the profit. Not financial advice, but I'm not, and I
I
might
don't.
see a dip, but I'm not going to time this thing. Like, I think, you got to remember the other thing that happened, that accounting rule where Bitcoin now is allowed to be actually like a monetary denomination asset on a balance sheet. Before, it wasn't. So they had to change the stipulation there. And I kick myself for not getting the words right. But basically now you can put Bitcoin on there and it's the fair market value of that on your balance sheet. And before, it was just like, well, and you have the Bitcoin, it was almost like it showed it. It's almost like
It
an
was like it was like
NFT on.
off the menu.
Right. So yeah, you all of a sudden you have 13 billion on your books, and then you buy a bunch of Bitcoin, you buy a billion in Bitcoin just to kind of hedge against the dollar, and then you're showing 12 billion. Like, obviously that doesn't work. Now you will actually show that value of 13 billion, and maybe as this squeeze happens, maybe it'll even go up. So it's not just the hedge or the ETFs here. It's a whole litany of folks, including companies, that could be putting a pressure on this in the next couple of years, and that's what I'm looking at.
It could be companies, it could be states, it could be, like there's just so many different potential participants, I guess is the
Right.
way to go with it. And not to take a turn, but just to take a turn
Right.
related to that is, I know that we were kind of texting and talking a little bit about, not necessarily, what we were saying earlier in the show, like thinking a couple levels deeper on this stuff. And you almost wonder, like, what's going to happen to what was so attractive about Bitcoin for the past, 14 years or whatever it is, this whole, notion of the white paper and the complete decentralized nature of this and the immutability of it. And, all these things, it's almost like, did it become legitimate in the eyes of investors and power structures and people that are way more influential than we would ever understand or imagine to be?
Right.
And is potentially making it a commodity, or I don't know what the right financial term, but making it an ETF and having it be that available widespread, will that inevitably take away some of the beauty of the ethos that attracted, the original people and the early people into it? Like, is it almost like, Nirvana was doing great, Bleach came out, Sub Pop was there, and then, Geffen found their way into distributing, Nevermind, and Kurt Cobain never recovered from dealing with that success globally that they weren't really digging. Like, it was like it was
Right.
like it was like this internal battle for him of being like, dude, I wanted to make, music that meant something to me, and now it's being, sold at Toys R Us and, everywhere in the world. And,
Right.
could I go back to being an indie band in Seattle and, making music I like from with my friends and touring in a van and doing it that way? Or do we now have to, headline Rock in Rio to 400,000 people? And is there a potential that this, the beginning of next year could represent a completely different beginning of an era for Bitcoin overall?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's going to change a lot because, as big as let's take an NFT whale, like a big spender in NFT, spending a couple million, 10 million bucks or
Yeah.
whatever, like someone who's probably a trader, a hedge fund guy who's like pure degeneracy, but is just buying all the big stuff like that. To us in the NFT world is a whale. Then you got the Saylors is just, although he still will be a whale, but you got these bigger folks in these companies who are early, who are whales. With Wall Street and with BlackRock, holding $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion in assets, like this is whale exponential whales, right? And so they're gonna put Bitcoin, they're going to turn everything into paper trades. The beauty is you can put it in your retirement accounts, but it is absolutely going to change. I think the biggest thing we have to look out for and keep our hackles up for and fight for is the freedom to transact and the freedom to hold our own wallets and run our own nodes, both on Bitcoin, and the freedom to mine. Like you can't unlearn what you've already learned.
Right.
The Constitution is set up. We have freedom of speech. We have, freedom to transact. I believe in court cases was a part of that. And I think that's the thing, Elizabeth Warren's trying to get rid of that right now. I don't think with the current Congress, because right now the Congress side of the equation is more Republican, but it's sad that it's a partisan issue, but I don't think she's going to get it through in this time. But that's something we have to look out for, because if everything turns to paper, then obviously we run the risk of, Wall Street is really good at having the same 21 million Bitcoin, just like gold. Like, do you think every gold ETF out there holds 1-to-1 bars for the amount of gold they have? Like,
Right.
I'm going to guess no. Right. And with Bitcoin, it's the same way. Now, hopefully the way the SEC set it up, you have to actually show it. And obviously the beauty of Bitcoin is it would be very easy to be like, these are my wallet addresses. Here's a transaction I made, like, to show you these are my addresses, and here is what I'm holding. So, and it checks in every 3 months or a year, whatever it is. So
Right.
hopefully that stays true. But I think that's where we, as the early folks, we need to make sure that the decentralization and holding our own keys stays intact forever.
Yeah. It's if you zoom out, and it's like everyone who's been on board is kind of, excited to see, it have, a run and become, kind of what the potential's always been there, and the believers have always kind of understood. And it's almost been like, yeah, get on the boat, dude. This is obvious.
Yeah.
Like, get in here. But then I just wonder, what are some of the ramifications, of having a crowded boat with, people who own the boat, and it's like, I don't know who you're going to be on the boat with. And it's a little concerning for some of this stuff overall, when you just look at who, is someone just going to snipe in and jump in and just change, kind of the narrative and the story and the elements of what were fundamentally so, ingenious and, transformative. The whole notion of it's the most cool, like, origin story for something that you could imagine.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
just,
we still don't know who Satoshi is. Like, it's
you can't make
the
that
greatest. We needed that in our culture at this time, because in 2008, when the banks collapsed and that whole tranches and mortgage scams, I mean, what an absolute joke. And Main Street's the ones who got screwed the most, and that's when Bitcoin came out. It's interesting, you're talking about like going deep and talking about these theories. I wonder, obviously, Fidelity, BlackRock, and Van Eck, and some of these big guys are among the biggest ETFs here. I wonder if the amount Saylor had, if they were, in addition to, even if they knew maybe, the SEC, Treasury, whatever, knew they're probably not going to win this one. I wonder if they tried to like shake Saylor out of his Bitcoin because he holds so much. Because the more that squeezes, the more, he may look like a genius. And I just feel like Wall Street and the insiders. I assume he is not a Wall Street insider. He's an American cowboy, right? And I just wonder if that irks them to no end. Like, he got in at, obviously way before 31, but his average right now is 31,000, and these guys aren't going to get that. And the more that gets bought, they're going to make their little, trading percentages on the ETF, their 0.5% or whatever they get, however many basis points they get. But Saylor is just literally can buy more or just put his feet up and just watch. Like, it's brilliant.
To me, that's the screenplay, just to kind of develop that over the next, 6 to 12 months. Like, that would be, if you could do an embedded, watch and just kind of document and see,
Right.
how that's going to develop. I think that's, one of the key, most fascinating, and of course there's a zillion fascinating things because that's what this space provides. But you're kind of talking about the headline act, right? You're talking about Bitcoin, and it's about to really, really take center stage. And, the different elements of, anything that could get nefarious or, blah, blah, blah. Or, as you're saying, kind of, the outsiders versus the insiders and how that all goes. Like, because Bitcoin, at its part of the beauty was always that it was very, kind of could be democratized in terms of letting, people get involved and get in there. And I just hope that it doesn't, I hope it maintains that as much as possible, I guess that's my little soapbox on that one.
Yeah, good point. And I think the other thing too is there's always a fork, right? So you would hate to fork Bitcoin, but that's saying in a month, if we just completely don't agree with the mainstream and that, like, you could get a rebellion where enough people fork. And even if some of the big miners, even if it's more of a minority, people can, that they can choose with their feet, and they could hold both. They could hold, once you fork, you hold on both chains. So you could hold, on Bitcoin TradFi, and you could hold on Bitcoin Pure, or we'll just call it Bitcoin. But so there's always the fork, but I think that's why you have to fight for being able to hold your wallet keys and not allowing them to be like, well, these are the true coins. And they're gonna, even when you think you've won, they go dormant for a while, and then it gets insidious again, and they find little ways and find bills to try and pass that have names like, protect all our children again bill, and it's filled with everything that's the exact opposite. So I think that's where we have to look out. I'm cautiously optimistic. Obviously everybody loves number go up paydays, but I think the longer you're in the space, the more you just want to make sure you have a decentralized currency for humanity,
Yeah, like what I want, I understand, we want to see, arrows of green arrow, things going up and everything like that. But what I like so much right now is that I like looking and knowing that I have a, hardware wallet, and that I can essentially utilize that, at any given time, should I need to, and I have that direct access, and I have that, I could hold on to for as long as I want. I could hopefully give it to whoever I would want, and, pass it on and do all that. And, that nature of it is what was so, intriguing to me. And then seeing it kind of build up a little bit and be like, dude, this is so awesome that you can do it this way. And I think that's what, it's just kind of scary that the banks are having to potentially embrace something that could represent their future failure. And somewhere in that dichotomy, there's a slightly unsettling feeling in my gut when I think about that. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, that's the weird part when you think of the big established banks getting involved and all that sort of thing. Whereas I'm just a little guy who likes having a little something on a hardware wallet and loves the whole notion of the space and the whole concept of everything that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll follow this story as it unravels, but 2024 is going to be a very interesting year. I would suspect that ETH is just going to be slow and steady up. Hopefully that's the next ETF. Bitcoin is going to go up. I suspect it'll go down for a little unless everybody's just throwing money at it. You know, remember in Canada, it was like the number one, and I think 2 or 3 of them came out at the same time, and it was immediately like the number one ever for, over gold. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, this is a big market, and there's a lot of buyers here, and there's a lot. You know, for my retirement account, I would love to have some of that denominated in Bitcoin. To me, that feels like a nice hedge against a lot.
Yeah. So it's like traditionally in doing a show like this, on you know, like this day of the year, it'd be like, well, what do you think's going to happen? You know, and blah, blah, blah. And then if you kind of just look back on the last year on some of the things, there was no way that we would have known, or at least I didn't know, that like ordinals was getting cooked up, you know,
Right.
and that was going to come in. And I think that, you know, that's one of the biggest stories to really, you know, reflect on, was to see how ordinals launched. And now at the end of the year, I'm at least questioning, like, is that the way moving forward? Like, what, you know, you have that kind of back and forth in your mind. Like, yes, I like Ethereum and the Ethereum NFTs, but as we've done shows and have talked about, you know, multiple times, what sort of collector do I want to be? And I didn't even know that there was going to be an opportunity to have some of the elements that the ordinals ecosystem has provided and the innovations on that side of it. So I'm not going to make any little, you know, parlor guesses on developments with the NFTs, but I will say what we talked about last time is I am concerned that my biggest concern is about some of these established, older, more kind of Web 2-y things coming in and trying to take over the innovation and what's cool in NFTs. And I'm talking about like the VV and, you know, like how that was, you know, like, hey, you get your digital collectible. Like that didn't sit well with me. I thought about that a couple times over, you know, since we talked about it on a show. And I was just like, man, if it goes digital collectibles and come to the marketplace and all that, like, oh, that's how we do it. And don't worry, you have to keep it there. Like, come on. You know, I really hope that we see a significant innovation that really, you know, takes this whole beautiful part of the, you know, token into the art and the, you know, non-fungibility and kind of just take it to another level. And I'm pretty bullish that it's going to happen, because I had no idea, you know, starting the year off, that we would even see anything on Bitcoin with the ordinal. So that's just,
Yeah, that one just came out of nowhere. Actually, interestingly, there's there was a mint on it was last week, and it was like last Thursday. It was NodeMonkes, and NodeMonkes has gotten a ton of both positive and negative press. It's almost like the camps in the ordinal space are divided right down the middle. You've got kind of the more of the mainstream folks, the people with bigger Twitter handles who are kind of pumping, you know, everyone's always pumping their own bags, but you know, you've got these Bitcoin shrooms, which I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of them. And there's just a lot of folks out there who are really were against NodeMonkes because they kind of changed a lot how they were going to do the distribution, but a lot of it was based on, you know, they were going to donate a lot of the money, and then the core Bitcoin team was like, we don't want your money. Even the ordinals team was like, that's too much money.
really?
They were, yeah, so they were like, okay, you know what, to make this and when they had people submit their wallets and their charities, they realized, like, how are we going to sift through all these charities? So they were like, you know what, we're going to make this a Dutch auction. There's no utility, which are my favorite ones, like no future roadmap. I don't want a roadmap. I don't need one, because to me, then right away built in is not hype and what could possibly happen and what parties I could possibly go to and what other free drops I might get. It's just like, you're just paying for this. So the reason I'm bringing up NodeMonkes is they did probably the best job I've ever seen in a Dutch auction, but they did the Dutch auction in a really interesting way. So they started at 0.21 Bitcoin, and I believe that's like what, 8,700 bucks. So not cheap. So it's every 6 blocks it went down 0.005. So from 0.21 to 0.205 to 0.20 to 0.195 every 6 blocks. So basically every hour it went down 0.005. And it was fascinating because a lot of the big OGs and some of the chats I'm in were like, oh yeah, we're like, not only did they put in the 0.21 the second the thing opened, some of them put in 1, 2, 3, 4 Bitcoin. Like literally they were like,
Wow.
I will take as many as I can. So, those were the whales. And so, you could see there was a ton of buzz there. So what basically happened was, as it went down, once they of the 10,000, they got rid of 8,000 of them through this Dutch auction. The further the price went down, the more that obviously people would chime in at their price. But another interesting thing happened. So, if all the big whales put in at 0.21, at 0.105, guess what happens?
There's no one there.
No, all the 0.21s now have 2 monkeys. So see this chart here on distribution, basically you get exponential. So at 0.105, let's say at that time there was 2,000 of the 8,000 done. Immediately, all of the 0.21s would go from 1 monkey to 2 monkeys, because now with their bid, they can afford 2 of them. And the amount went from, call it 2,000 to 3,000 or 3,500. So all of a sudden, these halvenings in this auction became this important point. Well, as you can see, this chart, that if you're listening, basically we have a chart and it goes up exponentially, and the guess was 0.04, but it actually was 0.03, which, here ordinals isn't huge yet, but it's a 10,000 PFP collection. That's a lot. A lot of these early collections were 100, 200. Little Peppo's was 420. 10,000's a lot, but they had an argument that they are truly the first 10,000 PFP set on Bitcoin. And Bitcoin punks did come first, but again, that's copied. So I don't, having a crypto punk, I don't recognize that one, but so I kind of liked it. And the NodeMonkey art, it's very simple, it's very cool, but I just wanted to give them a shout out. A lot of people are like, oh, how much money did you make? It's like, dude, they also in February, they took a gamble and they minted 10,000 ordinals. Like, now you couldn't even do that now because of ordinals and BRC20 tokens. Now there's this, people are coming out with all these charts on the cost to inscribe. So basically they're saying early collections are more valuable now because the cost to replace that, A, you're never going to have those low inscription numbers again, but B, the cost to inscribe something, the transaction fees on ordinals and on the Bitcoin blockchain, because it's so much busier now with ordinals, which is JPEGs, videos, like literally Doom, the game is on there. It's getting more and more expensive for that block space. So really fascinating. But hats off to these guys. They made, I don't even know what it was, but it was 30, 40, 50 million. I should have the number right in front of me, but they crushed it.
I'd like to see their number versus like the Azuki or something like that, just for curiosity.
Azuki was way, way higher. So Azuki was in there. I think they were like the 180 million. I mean,
I think so. Yeah.
Mind boggling. Cause remember those royalties they got before royalties kind of went away was in 2021 was just staggeringly big. So the launch might've been 60, 70 million, but the royalties they got was insane. Whereas the royalties in Bitcoin right now, you don't get those. So you get all your money kind of up front, and it's a lot of money, but you've got to kind of get it up front. So they did a great job. These guys got the early, actually here's someone who bid 1 Bitcoin. So they got 33, someone bid 4 Bitcoin. So they would have gotten about 125 of these things. I mean, just crazy. But the guys who bid 0.21, the highest technically where it started, they all got 7. So they were all thrilled. And that was a pretty good, happy number. So NodeMonkes, and they gave, basically if it was 0.3, there's going to be a little change in there. So 0.3, you get your 7, and then that would be exact for 0.21. But obviously some of these bids, you might get 1, 2, 4, 5. They had those refunds doled out the next day. And I checked mine because I bid for a couple, and I actually was just below the mark where I would have gotten a couple more. And so I got the refund, and I looked at the numbers. I'm like, that's exactly what I should have got. So I mean, with 10,000 PFPs, the way they handled this was just clean and spot on. It's definitely the best Dutch auction that I've witnessed. And remember, on Bitcoin, this is all like fertile ground. This hasn't really been done much on this side. A lot of it was still like backdoor trades and like, you know, with the shrooms, they're all going around behind the scenes like, hey, you want to buy a shroom? And I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want one. Yeah, because they want a couple Bitcoin for it. And I'm like, not interested.
When did you shift? It was a 23 shift, I think, when you shifted your priority towards the utility, right? Like that was kind of an evolution in your collecting, right? Like, because you just said like, oh, now I just want this, and I think that's been an evolution. No.
Yeah, for sure. I because I didn't fully understand it before, and I'd been in the NFT space for a couple of years and in crypto for like 8 years, but I didn't realize the different layers of where things were stored and how immutable they were. And the more I learned, when you get into CryptoPunks, obviously those didn't start on chain, but they quickly went to on-chain. I think in 2019 they went fully on-chain, so that's why I got Chaos Roads this year. That's why I sold all but one of my Azuki, because for me, utility, you're buying future hype. I mean, look at Azuki. They, the art is still amazing, but I feel like from the leaders there, you just get the same stuff. Like 23 was a interesting year and it was a tough year, as they make, what did they make on elementals? I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but it was 150 million. It was insane amount of money. And they're saying like, now they're going for the whole animation play. Like, for all the people in that, I still love all the holders, and I even like a lot of the team members. I think they're honestly trying, but that utility to me is just a bag they're going to have to carry. So if NodeMonkes had said all this utility, it might have gone for 0.2 instead of 0.03. I'm just making that number up. And
right.
That's like future potential for me. It's like, give me no hype, give me just the art and the concept behind it. They did a good job with branding, send nodes, and they were successful, and I expect no utility from it. And maybe when I see what I get, maybe I'll upgrade and buy a different one, or maybe I'll just hold what I have, or maybe I'll see if the price goes up. Maybe I'll sell them and not be in NodeMonkes. I don't know. I think I'll probably hold them for a while.
When do you see what you got?
I think it's today, actually. It's tonight, so I might look. But I'm in no rush. I think claiming starts tonight on Magic Eden, but I think they're going to keep it open for months and months and months. So there's no rush.
So it's not urgency.
No. And there might be an advantage to holding like, this is on the Bitcoin side, like it'd be the ETH equivalent of an unrevealed. I don't know if that's true or not, but then I don't know if you can pass that unrevealed token, but I've seen in some markets like the unrevealeds often are more expensive than the revealeds because people want to open that pack of baseball cards. So yeah, we'll see. One little note on this, like literally when they were done with this auction, handled it beautifully, their Discord got hacked, and because of Christmas, it got hacked last Thursday or Friday. Christmas is obviously this Monday. They were out of their Discord and got taken over by hackers for a good 5 days. Maybe it was 4 days. And the hackers turned off all the comments. They booted all the mods, and they were like, hey, you asked and we delivered. Solana monkeys, go to this site. Hey, don't worry, sometimes it's slow. Just keep clicking. And I'm sure, I'm sure a couple $100,000 or a couple million got drained. These guys just had a mint. Think of these hackers, like, pretty genius. Like, these guys are like, just like, because they made everybody who got hacked good. So, hats off to them. But
they did.
Wow.
Wow.
They paid the people back who got hacked. So they definitely took the high road, and hats off to them. And they just got it back the day after Christmas. So Discord employees came back to work, and finally somebody got a hold of the right person and they got their Discord back. But that shows you that Discord and Web3 and collections that have significant value, they're not a great fit, but there's no other game in town. So you just do your best. And I learned that because there was a lot of chatter in some of my Discord DMs, a lot of these hacks were like these people had 2FA and they had everything set up and dialed and still got hacked. So it makes you realize like maybe Discord allegedly is not as secure as an infrastructure itself. I mean, who knows where these hacks are coming from? So it's like the only thing I saw that could keep you safe, I guess you keep your key top administrator literally like in cold storage so it can't even be accessed, and only one machine, and that's the only person who can see it. You almost air gap it, and then that's the only person. You hook it up, you send your message to the Discord, and then you basically remove it again. I mean, it's just crazy that you have to go to those lengths, but you would think public private key signatures in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and Ethereum would solve this problem, but nobody's there yet. So this is what we have.
And it's just, I mean, moving forward and looking at what to be aware of and resolutions and things like that. It's like, we really have to be as vigilant as we can and not just, give, talking points to, protecting what you're doing. And, last show we were talking about, somebody who has been in the space and did well and got exposed to a hack and got, so we just have to be so vigilant because there's so much effort and sophistication going into these things. So you're having people that are certainly, tenured and know what they're doing get impacted by it. And that's a jarring realization as we move forward into 24 and beyond, that I think we're going to hear a lot about that in the next couple of years. And, obviously we have the elephant in the room with AI and how all that's going, and, how those are going to be, some of those strategies will be deployed. And, I like to think that, the people that we're talking to and the people that we kind of get, some of our information from and our correspondence with would be a little bit more at the forefront of that sort of thing. So right. I really feel for, some of the folks that are just don't even understand, anything about security and digital
right.
stuff and where they're going to end up this year. So something.
Well, yeah, just remember too, though, like you asked the question before smartly, like how are you going to onboard the mainstream? And, hopefully it's not this Candy or VV or these login, literally Web 2 logins. But if it was that more of a Web 2 login, I think I would be okay with that as long as you then, even paying with a credit card, I don't care. Like if there's something I want to buy, I'll buy it. But as long as you then can easily transfer it out to your own wallet. And that's where there's such a big fail. And, I think education needs to happen for some of these artists to do it right. So real collectors can, and hold their own art. When you have a digital asset, the only thing you really own is the public private key info. You're the only one who can move it around. But the beauty of all of this stuff is it lives out there on the interwebs for everybody to see, and you are just the one who owns the public private key pair to move that. You own the SAT.
Yeah, that's very true. And yep, it's just, even we were talking about, we were looking at your wallet compromise, the compromisability or whatever it may be of, one of the active hot wallets that you had. And it's just like, I'm going to make a pledge to myself that I'm going to start cleaning those up as we get into the next stuff and actually act on some of the things that I'm learning instead of like, yeah, but it probably won't happen to me, and keep just.
You just reminded me to do something because I'm not saying I haven't done it yet, but I also
it's not fun. It's not fun. No. No one wants to, but I think that it'd be prudent to do so and to take a look at just what you have and refresh it a little bit, because there's no cost or big issue with starting fresh with some different wallets and making sure that you're set up. So that was one of the themes. We heard about the ledger, we heard about this, we just heard about Discord, so
many hacks. I think we just saw the number across our desk this morning. It was a couple billion at least in hacks. It was single digit, billions. It was either 2, 3, 4, 5 billion, whatever it was. That's a lot of money just in hack. I mean, and look how many, like you said, Disco, look how many have happened in the last 3 months. Last week, we talked about 3 that happened the week prior in early December. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers. So, as it goes more mainstream, yeah, it will be interesting to see if people get smarter. With crypto Twitter, though, and Instagram, I also feel like, we're obviously doing a show here about nuance and really trying to dig deep and really trying to have an honest take. And sometimes, I'm not going to lie to you, I feel like people just don't give a crap. They care about number go up. So it gets disheartening at times, but maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's just like, dude, just keep driving, hands on the wheel, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I was watching something on like CNN today, and this is like my radar's up on this recently, and it was about, they called it pig butchering or something, and it's this scam that's coming out of like a neighboring country to Thailand. And what really annoyed me about it, obviously I don't want anyone to get scammed, was that the positioning of the piece was like, it's a cryptocurrency scam. So I'm just,
of course,
so, people are loving to lump cryptocurrency with that. And, it's just kind of annoying when you start hearing a lot of mainstreamy talking about, Elizabeth Warren every day, misappropriating things to help that narrative. So I think we need to be pretty smart about that as well.
Yeah, and educate people, and hopefully more and more people will be willing to listen and care for the, you come for the number go up and the pretty JPEGs, and you stay for the decentralization and the self-sovereignty of holding your own wallet and your own cash. You had talked earlier about, the ultimate is holding your hardware wallet, but the ultimate, like if you ever had to like pull the escape hatch, the ultimate is just memorizing a 24, 25 or whatever you have seed phrase and having nothing on you, so
yeah.
It's crazy how it's, when you try, that's why I'm trying to explain it to people. You're like, well, you own it, but you don't, because it's out there, it's out on the blockchain, but you're the only one that can move it. I mean, it's such a cool concept at its core that we forget just how magical that part is, and how even understanding that public blockchain side of it, that it's the private key is held or known by you to match the private public key pair with the the encryption, the 256 SHA or whatever it was, and that is enough, and that's again where we, the people, what was his name, Zimmerman?
Yeah.
Like, we need to fight
Phil.
for
Yeah.
Phil Zimmerman. We need to fight for encryption. I think we need to feature him in the next show. Like, whether we just talk about him, I'd love to actually get him on the show, but we need to maybe revisit that, because that was huge. And it feels to me like the powers that be are just keep fighting the encryption, because with encryption comes some privacy, which, everybody deserves.
So one thing that popped in my mind that I was gonna bring up that happened over the holidays. I was in conversation with the gentleman that put the bug in my ear and hooked me on the whole notion of crypto in the frothy bully times of when I got into the space. And I was like, hey man, how are you feeling? Da da da. And I'm like, and he is, just so you know, he is so tradfi, like he's so in it, and he's very successful in everything. And I'm like, dude, the ETFs. He's like, what are you talking about? So he was
on
like,
his radar,
not one bit. And I'm like, dude, this is this is huge potentially. He's like, what? I haven't been reading up on that. What are you talking about? And I was like, oh God, okay.
Well, when you buy at 68 and you're just like, it goes to 16. I mean, think about it. Yeah. It's like, wow, I am in over my skis. So it'll be interesting. The sad thing again is, if this does go, the people will FOMO in when it's all time highs again, because we know in our space how manipulative these influencers are in creating FOMO. Think about the mainstream media where all of a sudden they're like, oh, maybe it's not so bad, and maybe you should put 1 or 2% in. I don't know what angle they're going to take, but at some point they may, once the big traditional companies have these ETFs, they might be pushing it a little more, and then people will get in at new all-time highs. And maybe that's not too late. Maybe it's no big deal. That's just what you get for being in the mainstream. But it's when you get burned really bad, obviously you are not going to stay near the stove for too long.
Yeah. But, we're talking about people getting in at all-time highs or whatever. As we said earlier today, Saylor just bought, a grip at 41 something. So, that's still a pretty nice number to,
Did you say a grip?
Yeah.
A grip? I never heard. I like that. A grip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
All right. What else do we want to hit on today?
Well, I think we're let's see. We've talked about predictions. I don't know what else you want to talk about. I know you want to talk about.
Yeah. There's one thing that I wanted to bring up just because we do like to try to use the Charlotte Bond loom and weave back into things from other times, other episodes. And, we had a great show. I think it was one of my favorite shows when we kind of learned a little bit more about AI from one of our listeners, actually. It was incredibly informative, and it really, opened my eyes to, the potential intersections and everything from AI, right, and then specifically the decentralized side of it and some of the projects that are going and some of the ironies that some of the more decentralized platforms are actually from, Meta or some of the more centralized companies. But I thought it was really interesting that just today, their news came out that the New York Times filed a lawsuit against OpenAI and Microsoft for copyright infringement. And I think that this may be one of the most interesting battles to watch. And right, I'm wondering if AI is potentially going to go through a little bit more of the ringer, kind of like crypto had to go through for the past, X amount of years, where, right, wait, now people are going to look at it. And the New York Times is essentially saying, hey, wait, you trained your bots on our material, and we are funding the journalists to create this content that you're then feeding your systems to then provide answers to essentially make right, us irrelevant. And I think that I think it'll end up going to the Supreme Court. I think it's going to end up being a massive, which way it goes with AI. And, I do, from the little research I've done and trying to learn more and more, like, I do think that there's as big a fight for that being more decentralized versus centralized. And I think that this could be part of a piece of that puzzle moving forward. So just something to really keep our eye on, I think. And I thought it was a really big development because you don't get much more established from a media perspective than the New York Times. And you don't go and sue a company that's more established than Microsoft. And, it's going to be a pretty existential battle, I think.
Yeah, and there's a lot at play here too, because think about it. The New York Times, obviously a lot of their stuff is behind a paywall. So if they're grabbing that, I would think they'd have a stronger case. If it's just out there, like, just grabbing stuff from Reddit or all these places where you don't need to necessarily log in to see the text and get scraped, that's public information. So how is that going to be treated? And when there's going to be so many political agendas here. It's mainstream media versus kind of Silicon Valley. But it's also going to be like, well, who owns the rights to this? And the other thing is, like, so let's say, okay, you scraped all this New York Times stuff in the past. How would you've already used your LLMs or your learning models and stuff. Like, how would you undo that? It almost seems like silly, and they've made so much money. Is it just a massive payout, or is it something much, much deeper than that?
Yeah, exactly. And, I was reading some of it today where they were saying that one of the things that was mentioned and is really irritating to the New York Times is they would be the source to, like, go check their site on something, but the chatbots would just omit that part of it to help not drive the traffic even to the source site. So they're talking about losing, eyeballs on their content as a result of taking their information and
Right.
providing the answers where you don't then have to go check the resource that they built for it. So
Right.
there's just it's a monster of a potential story, and it was just breaking today, and obviously it's not going to go quickly, but to your point, it's really setting up this big battle. And I wonder where Elizabeth Warren's going to fall on this. I wonder how all that's going to go and how it's going to get positioned from that side of things.
I know. And there was a whole thing that I listened to that just said Elizabeth Warren, she gives her marketing department a lot of leeway. And a big reason that she brings up crypto a lot is because it gets a lot of clicks. So, it's this new mentality, or maybe this has always been the mentality of the big power players, but all press, good or bad, is good press, right? Yeah. So, I don't know if she's up for election this year, but God, I hope that she is. I hope she loses. She needs to go. So,
indeed. All right. Well, I think that, I couldn't be more, I don't want to say bearish or bullish, but I couldn't be more intrigued to see how things are going to play out. And, we've been through the last handful of years. You couldn't have predicted really any of the biggest stories. I even remember, when, the Russia and Ukraine, like that happened, I think kind of like February was when the invasion, and you weren't hearing about that at all, at the end of the previous year. It just
unless you were really following it. And it just goes to show you, how, and obviously we're very far away from everything that's going on here in America. We've got a couple of oceans, on either side separating us from most of the populace in this world. But yeah, I had forgot that was this year. I assumed that had started last year, but yeah, I guess when you put that in perspective, as we wind up the show, like 2023 was just another absolute roller coaster. And, as we all hopefully relax for, heading into the new year and revamping for 2024, hopefully we can all stay centered and balanced, and also know, like, I think the hardest thing for me sometimes is you hear about all these injustices in the world, and you just want to fight and make a good one. Like, why can't people be better? And it's hard because you can't focus your energy everywhere, but B, there's certain things, many things are totally out of your control. And a lot of times just sweeping up your little corner of the universe and being kind to the folks around you and your kids and your family, even though they might drive you nuts sometimes, is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, you got to grab the moments, and you have to, it's all about the gratitude perspective. I think as I age, much like a fine cheese or wine, I realize that, you can look at it one way or the other. And why the hell wouldn't you look at it from, hey, I'm happy that we have this going on, or, it could certainly be worse. And I don't know if that can tie into just maybe we do this time a communal something good. And I think that we're bullish on communication. I'm bullish on this show. I'm bullish on being able to, talk things out and think things through. And I just don't think that we're going to run out of things to discuss and to learn and to kind of noodle on. And I think that that's one of the great things about truly being alive every moment is there. A really smart person. I watched her parent her son, and he came in and was saying something like, "I'm bored," and she goes, "Boredness is a choice." There's many things that always stuck with me. Like, you can't be bored in this world.
Yeah. No, that's well said. That's well said. So, all right, everybody. Well, Happy New Year. It's silly that we wait till the end of the show because, to say, hey, punch that like button, leave us a review, comment. But also,
we wouldn't be advised to do that, I'm sure.
I know. We do it right at the beginning, and we probably have graphics like, smash that like button, smash it. So, but we're happy you guys are here with us. The audience is growing, and we're excited about that. But we also just love having these conversations, and we're gonna do it our way and be honest and do it as organically as possible. But if anyone has any ideas out there, we're easy to get a hold of. So Chicago X on Twitter, Disco X on Twitter, or just leave comments in YouTube or anywhere, and we will see them, and we will definitely get back to you. So happy New Year all.
Sorry to interrupt, but as always, this show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing should be considered financial advice. We recommend never getting over your skis and never investing what you can't afford to lose. So with that, as a sign off, I too say Happy New Year, and let's look forward to having some fun and being interested and learning and being engaged as we move down this road.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.